Just curious, why, I think I know, but why do you hate that question?
I guess just because, because you have that assumption in your mind that you're already doing that. And so it's a question that gets under your skin because it's kind of, it's pinpointing something that you maybe need to look at.
Because you know what the next question is going to be, right?
A rising tide raises all ships.
We're trying to find, activate, and retain more customers.
You work from 9 to 5 to make a living.
And from 8 to 2 to make a life.
When we look at the heart of the network,
the data shows us key performance indicators about our business.
And this is the InXpress Show.
Hello, InXpress Network business owners, franchisors, entrepreneurs, bootstrappers, listeners everywhere, and everyone in between all of that. We are very excited to bring you episode number 9 of the InXpress Podcast, and our host today, Blake Waller, is talking with our guest, Shane Hubbard.
Shane Hubbard, welcome to the show.
Good to be on, Blake.
All right, man. I always forget, you're from Iowa, or you just spent some time there shortly?
I spent a couple of college years in Iowa, but originally I grew up in Kansas.
In Kansas, okay. I won't screw that up again. And you graduated from Grand Canyon University.
Yes.
And
that was a few years ago.
Okay.
Right around the time I started with InXpress.
Okay. And I remember before starting with InXpress, you sold door-to-door security systems. Is that right?
Yep. I worked for an ADT authorized dealer, and that was kind of how I got my start in the sales game. And I'm gonna make you smile now, but I need the real answer. I love this story on how you found InXpress. Oh, on how I found InXpress. So yeah, this is like the secret menu at In-N-Out Burger, the not so secret menu. So it was actually through. So I'll tell you the story. So I went to the first year, I believe it was second year maybe, that I won SWAT. We're sitting around a table. I can't remember. I think it was the second year, actually, though. I'm trying to envision the room that we were in Las Vegas. Dustin, that was back when Dustin and Paul attended all the SWAT, meetings. And he asked the 5 of us, there's 5 winners in the room, like how we all got recruited, how everybody ended up at InXpress working with the people, the franchisees they worked with. And I don't think a single one was like the traditional method. They were all 5, because after everybody went around the room, Dustin just laughed and said, well, that was not very helpful to how we can find sales reps that will be SWAT level reps, because none of them were that way. And so, yeah, mine was actually...
well, hang on. What are you referring to, real quick before you get to that? What are you referring to as the traditional way?
I don't know... The ones that people go, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, people putting out an ad and getting responses. I believe Mark Lyon, they met Barbara because they worked in the same building, I think, and she had worked at TNT a couple years before that, and that's how they found and recruited her.
Okay.
They worked in the same office building, and at the time, I'm trying to remember who else was in that group. Back then, Barbara was in that group like every year, of course. But yeah, everybody's story was just kind of like not the traditional way of getting recruited into InXpress.
Okay.
Stories like that.
All right, sorry, keep going. You were almost to the best part.
And so I think I was actually the grand finale, actually, so that made it even more fun. It was through a dating app, and so it was funny because so I was, on this dating app, and so was Kelly, of course. And so we just messaged each other back and forth, and it was really, really odd because for some reason we decided, hey, let's meet for breakfast. And it became it turned into like a business meeting at breakfast because I told her my background working for ADT, home security sales. And she was like, oh, well, that's what I'm in sales. And she told me like how she had saved somebody some money, like on the letter to Africa, that they were paying like $80 for a document. And she's like, yeah, I was able to offer it to him for $55 and it saved him like $20, $25 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's what you do for a living, huh? She's like, yeah, we just, sell shipping services. And so next thing you know, we were like texting after we had our little breakfast hangout, and we just decided, hey, maybe we should look at, having me work with Kelly at InXpress. So that's kind of how that went down.
I love that for so many reasons. One, it is like the number one example of the book Fanatical Prospecting, because you're talking about going on a blind date. Like, probably work is, well, maybe not blind, sorry, but like going on a first date, and work is like the last thing you're thinking about, but that's what you guys are sitting there talking about, and you strike up a conversation about what you do, and what you take away was, wow, maybe I could work with this company. That's amazing. And also Kelly, like, coming up with examples of, like, we had a letter to Africa that we saved people money on, and that's how she explains it. It's like
I clearly remember
constant elevator pitch. That is amazing.
And Kelly and I have a standing disagreement to this day on whether I said, hey, I want to work for you, or whether she said, hey, I think you should come work for me. And if you know Kelly and I, our relationship, that's not surprising on how we both remember it different ways.
Yep. It's like the conversation that people have when they get married. They say, no, you wanted to date me more than I wanted to date you.
Exactly. There you go.
I love it. Well, good. That's cool. I like that all of the sales reps found InXpress in a non-traditional way. Or maybe more importantly, all of the successful sales reps, right? You said all the ones from SWAT didn't come in the traditional way.
Yeah, in that room at that time, that year, that was true. I think Frank was there that year too, another one of Mark's reps, and so he got recruited. Once Mark hired Barbara, like a couple years down the road, Barbara said, hey, I used to work with this other guy Frank at TNT, and I think he'd be a good fit too. So it was like a referral thing. So that's everybody there that year had a story that was similar to that kind of a thing.
That's cool. So from there, you guys keep talking. We end up, fast forward a little bit, you and I end up in the same training class in 2014. And then when did you kind of get the feeling of, like, I could be good at this?
Okay, so the same, what did they call it back then? Boot camp?
Yep.
At Salt Lake, yeah. Yeah, so that was crazy. I think, if I recall, you and I are the only ones left from that group.
How many were in there too?
Oh, there was a few. I mean, that table was full. I would say, what do you think? Maybe between franchisees and sales reps, maybe 20 people in that class?
I think 18? 20 people, yeah, including, since then, John Thompson, global CEO, has moved on. We've had a lot of people that lasted a very short amount of time from that boot camp.
Yeah. So that's a fond memory. I remember that. That was fun. And then you had to leave halfway through the week for a wedding, and so you had to go back and do it again.
Yep. I got double the training, and I'm still not as good as you.
How about that?
No, but really though, was there a time that you felt that it was like, okay, I get this based on either my previous sales experience, or was it a constant, like, all right, because I know you're a huge process guy, and we'll get to this, but was it kind of I'm always going to learn, and I continue to get better, and all of a sudden, like, I took my head out of the water and I was being successful? Or was it like, I think I got this, and I think I can be really good at this?
I had a lot of confidence at the start. I think I got this. I think I can be good at it. But I had done B2C sales with ADT, and this was business to business here at InXpress. And so I tried at first to kind of apply a couple of different techniques, I guess you would call them, or strategies that worked well with that. And basically it was just a big flop with business to business. Mainly it was just trial and error. Like, Kelly taught me how to do it, and then, like, I would do things, like, one of my biggest challenges at the time was self-imposed, shooting myself in the foot, was I would just follow up with people way too much, or try calling the same decision maker way too many times, not reaching them. And I remember Kelly called me like the king of follow-up at one point. She's like, "You're the king of follow-up. Like, you need to be the king of activations." And actually I was activating. I remember like my 5th month in, I started like the very tail end of April. So basically May was my first real month. And then in September, I won an InXpress contest for the most activations in that month. And so I was activating. I came in second. I think I had 10 activations that September, so second place. Mr. Peacock, he had 15. And so with his app, his newly launched Shopify app back then. But yeah.
Unbeatable during those days.
Yeah. And it was a contest for franchisees and sales reps, so everybody was allowed into that contest. So yeah, he got me. But yeah, it was just kind of constantly like asking Kelly for advice and help. And I talked with other people. I talked with Annie Miller, who gave me some good advice. I talked with Barbara McCarty a couple of times, talked with Mark Lyon probably once. So it was just basically having some conversations. And then it wasn't until about, I would say, a year in that I really, I was activating a lot of people, but they are businesses, but they weren't always right customers. And so it didn't really start, paying off until probably 16 to 18 months in. And that's when I kind of just hit the stride, I guess you could say, when you become unconsciously competent.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So that about 16 to 18 months. And like I said, I was doing okay. Like I was getting by, but I wasn't really outstanding or anything.
Okay. And what's changed since then? How have you gotten better since that time?
Well, that was, 5 or 6 years ago, right? At the 18-month mark, let's say. I think that would have been October of 2015, and here it is December of 2020. So
a million things.
Yeah. So I had a friend. So now I'm trying to think. It was about January or February of 2016. Had a friend who also did sales, but he sold for it's like a copy. He did like a copy company or something, like copy machines or something. And so he had like a list of accounts, and he was supposed to visit 30 accounts every day. And then month to month, it was the same accounts. So like prospects.
Okay.
So if he was visiting, it might have been 20 or 30 accounts, like today, Monday, he would go stop in at all these places. And then a month from now, on the same Monday, the 14th or 15th of January, he'd go back and visit those same ones again. And he'd do that every day through the week and through the month. And so his whole thing was he would just keep trying to get that decision maker to come out and meet with him. I guess it worked well for what their sales process was. And so I told Kelly about that. And I said, I have all these people. So I wasn't telesales back then. I was strictly like local Phoenix sales, like find businesses, find out if they're shipping, whether over the phone or in person. Mm-hmm. And then once I've determined this is a potentially a right customer, a right prospect, then the next goal is get the decision maker on the phone and set an in-person appointment. So you call up the decision maker, say, hey, I found out you're doing some shipping, international, domestic, freight, whatever, and I'd like to meet with you this Thursday at 2 p.m. How's that sound? And set the appointment and go in face-to-face it, right? And so I said, I have all these decision makers I cannot reach on the phone. What if we implement some of my buddy's techniques and just we have these, what we called stop-by days. And so we implemented that in March of 2016, and every Tuesday was a stop-by day. And I just had a list of people I couldn't get to, and I used a routing app and just drive around the city.
Yep.
And just stop in person. I just walk up to the reception desk and say, hey, I'm here to see Bob or whatever. And it worked like magic, basically. I got through to so many people I couldn't reach before. And once you've got somebody face-to-face, at least for me back at that time, if I could get somebody to sit down with me face-to-face, 90% of the time I could convince them to sign up.
Yep. That's a huge takeaway that I think people should hear, because there's so many times, especially if you're contacting people locally, you get blown off all the time, right? If you're not in their office, or if you call them and they don't answer, I'm busy, or hey, I don't have time right now, or you can't set an appointment. If you just pop in and say, I called you, I was in the area, I wanted to see if you had 10 minutes, it's amazing how much that works, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was surprised that, you will get the receptionist or like, is he expecting you or whatever, and I'd have a comeback for that. But a lot of times they would just get up from their desk and go back and bring that person out. Or I could even stop by behind the building, go in the warehouse entrance and talk directly who I was trying to reach. So
yep,
it was I had a lot of different success with that through different varying methods of implementing that program.
Yep. And then you and Kelly always talk about mushroom selling, right? So you have a stem, maybe you're going to see somebody that is in that area that you have tried to talk to or tried to set an appointment, or you have a customer in that area, and then you kind of bounce around in that other, their neighbors, because most likely there's probably businesses that are like your customer or like somebody that ships internationally, for example, and then you're just kind of door knocking in that area.
Yeah, so that would work on these stop by days. In fact, it was going so well. Like I was getting into neighborhoods I hadn't even known existed, industrial or business, neighborhoods that I hadn't come across in the first year and a half I've been working InXpress. And so sometimes I'd come back and I would have only done 5 of my 15 or 14 or whatever number of stop bys that day because I got so caught up in just going door knocking, And so Kelly was like, okay, we need to start doing 2 days a week. And for a while I was doing Tuesday and Thursday, like 3 weeks out of the month. And I had, so we're both in the Phoenix area, Blake, you and I. And so I divided it up into East Valley, and then South Phoenix and North Phoenix. So I had like 3, like a grid of like 3 areas. And so that's what I do like the first 3 Tuesdays and Thursdays of each month.
Okay, I love it. And then, so for something like that, when you start a new process like that, how long does it take you or you and Kelly to realize this is working, or we need to pivot into something else?
Well, for that, it was basically instant. It was like instant success. But yeah,
why? You got like same day activations, or what was the instant success?
I was just getting through to decision makers. They were either meeting with me right then and there on the spot, which was the norm.
Wow.
Or they would, we'd set a time for me to come back. And then there were some that would blow me off. But my point is, I was having a lot more success at reaching these people that I could not get on the phone. So even if I would go out and do 10 stop bys and get 3 decision makers to come out and talk to me, and then 1 or 2 of them talk with me some more, that's a good day, right?
Yeah.
If they sign up and activate. So, and you're doing that 3 Tuesdays a month. So yeah, it just was really successful. Like that's really what really took off in the spring of 2016 for us.
Good.
So, I talked about this in 2017 at the sales conference. There's that strategy known as fail fast and fail cheap, and that's implement something and then try to see if it's going to work as quickly as possible without putting a lot of money into it. And so I don't know, like for that program, yeah, there was some risk because I'm driving around in my car and I got gas money and everything, spending money on gas, and then I'm not in the office doing phone calls, because everybody can tell you can make a lot more phone calls in a day than you can stop and buy places, right? Mm-hmm. So it was risky in that sense, like, but yeah, it paid off as far as revenue and gross margin and all that.
Right, of course. And if you look at the numbers, so if somebody is inside thinking about going outside or want to try it a couple days a week, like you said, if you're really only sacrificing the 2 to 3 good ones that you talk to per day, right, on the phone. If you compare the good conversations on the phone versus in person, it's probably going to be the same. Like when I started out, I door knocked, and it was 40 to 50 door knocks a day, and you get more of a vast answer of saying, no, we don't do what you are asking, but we do this, and they're much more likely to talk to you if you're in their office, if you're not obviously too pushy and polite.
Yeah, And also, you got to consider a lot of these places don't even have receptionists. It's sometimes just a 2 or 3 man shop or something, and so you can get right to the owner. He's in there doing his thing when you walk in the door. So I still do this to this day. Like I still, like last month I had actually tomorrow I have about 15 I'm doing face-to-face in person tomorrow stop bys. So I still do it. I do a lot more of the telesales now, like over the phone. But I'm still a firm believer. I think if anybody lives in, a metro area like you and I do, and they're not doing some sort of face-to-face door knocking or whatever, then you're cutting yourself short.
For sure. Well, listen, man, what you're doing is absolutely working. I was just on your LinkedIn, and you have to keep clicking show more under your awards section. You've been, basically perennial SWAT winner, a top 3 margin winner for a number of years, fastest margin growth, fastest activators. Congratulations, dude. And the last convention, you cracked the number 1 overall margin for a sales rep. How's that feel?
Yeah, that was great. It took a few years to get there, but yeah, it was just a lot of doing the same thing every day, over and over again. Kind of like I felt at times like the tortoise and the hare kind of story, where you're like the turtle and you're just kind of plodding along, but you're just consistent at it. And so I was pretty happy to finally get like the number 1 overall. That was I think I was happy about the growth, because that was just like an encouragement when I got the growth award, growing year over year. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know if I'd ever get the one that I got this last convention, just the overall margin number. So that was it was nice. It was nice to win that. It's kind of like icing on the cake, I guess.
For sure. And it's got to back up, like how much does the confidence boosted when you win things like that? Like do you think now, okay, I'm really doing this smarter than everyone else, or is it simply I'm doing it period and other people aren't?
Everybody, there's different methods, and, you can have good months and bad months, and I definitely don't think I'm doing it any smarter than anybody else. In fact, this year I'm not going to win the number 1. So I got it one year, now somebody else is going to win it in February, collect that trophy.
There you go.
So, so there's always room at the top, right? There's always somebody who's nipping at your heels, trying to get that first place trophy. So yeah, I don't think I'm doing anything any smarter necessarily. Like Kelly always says, every franchisee who hasn't been in the system all that long is looking for like the magic bullet or the silver bullet, whatever you want to call it.
Always
on how can I do smarter work and less work and get killer margin. And there have been some top shelf ideas over the years, like the Shopify app that James developed and different things. But for the most part, it's basically just doing the work, making the calls, making the door knocks.
Well, they're spurts, right? They're waves. It's the right place at the right time, and that wave was ridden, right? And it's not that it doesn't last, but it's just not a long-term strategy. Like, you might find something like that. You might spend a lot of money and time looking for something like that. Everybody in sales is always wanting to find that, right? But it's just the sacrifice for the work, or I should say the replacement for the work just doesn't exist. Like, you have to prospect all the time. You have to be willing to, mushroom sell, like you said, or door knock and go out and find that, pop in on 15 people. It's uncomfortable, right? But you're willing to do it, and other successful sales reps are willing to do it. So it shows up in your numbers. Like, that was my biggest takeaway. I can't remember when you did your presentation. I think you just said 2017 at Salt Lake.
Yes.
When you did your sticking to the process stand up, and it was like you mentioned coaches like Nick Saban, and how you
yeah.
you have to fall in love with the process. And the best part about that is you don't know when the process is going to love you back, right? I mean, it's one of those things, like, all you have to do is be prepared for the opportunity when it comes, right? Which is you being able to sell the service, talk about it, have a genuine conversation with somebody that's interested. You never know when you're going to find that time. Like when you're on a first date with somebody, right? And a job opportunity comes across. I don't know. I love that, man. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. So I think that's why I admire what you do so much.
Well, I actually have that and a handful of quotes on my wall here in my office that remind me of that. And I have the Nick Saban quote. He said, "Don't think about winning the SEC championship. Don't think about the national championship. Think about what you need to do in this drill, on this play, in this moment. And that's the process. Let's think about what we can do today, the task at hand." And so it's all about those habits, because people always look for motivation or inspiration, but your habits never let you down. Like if you develop a habit, then after a while, it feels weird not to do it. Whether that habit is exercising every day after work, or whatever. I don't have a list. I didn't think of this ahead of time, but whatever that habit is, it starts to feel weird if you're not doing it. Well, another one is Kelly. Back in 2015 or so, we developed this scorecard, and she wanted me to mark down every time I made a call, and then another circle if I talked to the decision maker, and then that was for the CRM, and then if I set an appointment, that was another section, and then for lead generation, that was another part of the scorecard, how many dials and everything. And so I didn't much like it when I was doing it, because I'm like, oh, I have to keep track of all this stuff and everything. And now today, I don't think she cares whether I do it or not, and I can't stop doing it. Like It's just a habit. Like it feels so weird for me to make a phone call and talk to somebody and then not make my little mark on my scorecard. Yep. And so that's what habits do to you. They basically own you. So bad habits own you, just like good habits. So once you're married to that habit, and that's basically just the consistency and doing the same thing day in and day out.
Yep, exactly. Because you still need those daily wins, even when you're not getting revenue dollars every day, right? You're not winning actual accounts and activations every day, so you have to find a way to celebrate those wins on a small basis, even like half days, right? What did I do this morning? Well, look at my scorecard. My tallies say that I made this many calls and I had this many good conversations, which will lead to, right, X, which will lead to Y, which will lead to Z. And those are the national championships in Nick Saban's language that you can't think about every day, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my sales managers, when I worked for that ADT authorized dealer, he basically told me, and that was an independent contracting gig, like you didn't have to work if you didn't want to. So if you wanted to take 3 days and go to the casino, or go to Cancun for a week or whatever, then you didn't have to ask off. You just whatever you want. Well, one of my managers, he loved going to the casino, so sometimes he just disappeared for 3 days, and nobody would know where he was at, and he just emerged from the casino.
Wow.
And so it was like work your own schedule, be your own boss. And one of the managers said, if you do the same thing week in and week out, then you'll have basically the same results at the end of each month, the end of each quarter. Like you may have a week where you have hardly any signups for the security systems. You hardly have any installs, and then the next week you'll have like 4 or 5. And then if you just keep going out every single day and treating it like a job, then you're going to have the same results at the end of the month and the quarter. And that's so true. It's like in Express. You do the same thing every day, you're going to see the same results.
Exactly.
You're going to keep activating. At the end of the month, you'll have those eight activations or whatever.
Exactly. So that kind of goes into this question. Who is the most successful salesperson in your opinion, and how would they sell InXpress services if they had the same resources that you had?
Yeah, I don't really study or know a lot of salespeople. So,
maybe sales concepts or theories. Like you read a lot of sales books.
Yeah, Yeah, that's true. I trace it back to, like I said, I had two managers at that ADT authorized dealer I worked for, and one of them was actually my cousin's boyfriend at the time. That's how I got that gig. Another non-traditional route, right? So those two guys could sell snow to Eskimos. I mean, they were very good at what they did, but they both had totally different personalities. They were like friends and they ran the office, and they had totally different personalities and totally different. The same pitch at the door, I went out with each of them a couple of times, I think 3 times each when I was training. And the same pitch, but the style was so different and the personality. And I actually recruited one of my friends I got like a recruiting bonus and got like overrides on all of his ADT contracts that he signed up. So I recruited one of my friends and I trained him. And when we went out, the first door I walked up to and knocked on, I delivered my pitch, and his job out hit the concrete. Like, he got in the car with me afterwards, and I was like, who is that guy? Like, he didn't recognize me suddenly. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I guess I'm acting. It's like theater. And so I basically was mimicking these other two guys that had trained me. Like, I kind of picked one of them, and I just decided I wanted to mimic his style. Okay. And that's basically what I did when Kelly trained me. I just mimicked her, like her voice tone and kind of how she's very quick and to the point on the phone and in sales and in real life too, right? I mean, yep. No nonsense, just like, let's get it done, chop chop, and that's how she's on the phone too, talking to people and like asking for the decision maker and like, so at probably about 9 months in, I said, I think I want some more like training, like I want to hear you on the phone again. So we took like an evening, and she said, okay, we'll make some phone calls and I'll critique them. I said, no, I want to hear you call. I want to sit here for half an hour and have you go through my CRM, and you just pick up the phone and start making phone calls and asking for decision makers. And so she's like, okay, like she didn't get it, right? So she did it for like 30 minutes, and she's like, all right, I've done my 30 minutes, now you start making calls. So I started making the calls and just having that refresher, like I started selling like her, and I got off the phone after like the first couple, and she's like, oh my God, you sound like me. Yeah. I'm like, that's why I needed that. I needed to get that back in my brain, like how you do it and how you're so good at it. Nice. So I'm very much a proponent of like shadowing, people who are good at things. That's how I've been so successful at both my sales jobs. It's just like having somebody who is already good at it and then just watching how they do it and then mimicking that. Yep. That's good. There you go, Kelly. That's so. Okay, I wonder if you could leverage that any further, like for people to set appointments for you, right? Like if they could learn how you set appointments on the phone, could they learn the same way that you learned from Kelly? Yeah, like if I had somebody that was training to do that, yeah. And we actually had a rep that was in our office working for us last year for a few months. And I trained him, and I'm not sure that he really copied my style exactly so much, but he was doing very good, getting quite a few signups and activations too. So again, I'm not sure that I can I don't know how to teach somebody else to do what I do, like if that's their learning style, but I'm just saying that's what worked for me. Right. Yeah. You have hearing other people do it. Exactly. And you have to intrinsically pick up on that, right? You can't really tell somebody, listen to how she says that or listen to where she goes from there. Like you I don't know, you really just kind of have to have that DNA to notice what people are like. Like you use the word acting, like you're acting like them. You were acting like Kelly on the phone, and then you're like, whoa, okay, this works. Yep, exactly. Okay. Yep. So you're number one, so this one's a tough, but if you could add a characteristic to your DNA that's not a superpower to be better at what you do, what would it be, and why don't you perceive yourself being good at this right now? Believe it or not, it would probably be, and Kelly would probably say the same thing, at least, 3 or 4 years ago she would say this, and it would be to be more assertive. Once I'm on the phone with somebody, assertive in not letting them get away so easy. Whether it's like, let's look at these invoices right now, don't email them to me, pull them up right now, or whatever it might be with that decision maker once you've got them on the phone, not allowing them to say, hey, shoot me an email, or hey, I'm busy right now, call me back, next week or whatever. I think that would be probably the characteristic that I still 3 or 4 years later I'm trying to get better at.
Okay. And why do you think that's hard for you?
I don't know exactly. I mean, it's when you're on the phone with somebody, you can't see what their facial expressions are. You can't see what they're doing right then. You've got like a fraction of the information available to you that you have when you're in the room with somebody, right? So if I'm in the room with somebody, it's a lot easier for me when I'm out, which is probably why I was a lot better doing the, had so much success when I was doing the in-person, is because I was a lot more assertive in person with, let's just knock this out right now. Mm-hmm. Over the phone, it's easier for them to sell me on they're too busy or they got a customer in front of them than it is for me to sell them on, hey, this is important. I could cut your cost. You could have the best service you've ever had with InXpress and me. Let's do this.
Yep. Or wait, right? You can sit there and wait for them to be unbusy when you're there.
Right.
But that's virtually impossible on the phone.
Yep.
Okay. Makes sense. How about overcoming lack of motivation or a business depression or a loss of vision? I mean, you're very good at that and sticking with the process, but are there other times where you're like, man, I'm in a cold streak?
Yeah, I'm really grateful to, a lot of the folks that at InXpress that have, helped me and spoke with me over the years, like Barbara and Annie Miller. And I had a standing phone call, and still have one that goes back probably 3 years now, with Jason Mateer, who, he was a sales rep, franchise owner, and now he's like a world traveler, probably sitting on some island somewhere.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast.
He was?
Yeah.
Check that one out.
Yep.
So yeah, I, talking with people, I Skype with different franchisees and sales reps, and so it's just when you're like having a bad day or a bad week, it's just reaching out to somebody else and just like having a conversation. I've done it with you before. I'll Skype into you and be like, hey, how's it going? What are your numbers looking like? Like, how's Robin doing? And we'll just like, chat. So it doesn't even have to be a phone call. Just a quick chat. Another thing that is kind of helpful is just like to look at all the people. If you have somebody that the freight went sideways, or they are just ticked off because this, that, or the other, web ship or invoicing was wrong or something, then it's temporary usually, and you just sit back and look. Like I keep every year I have a board of all the activations I've had for each month, written out, all the company names, like a whiteboard, and it's just like looking at that and realizing all those people said yes, and 99% of them are so glad they did. Right?
I like that.
They're happy.
I like that.
InXpress. Yeah. Yes. So that it's just I think you said lack of motivation and business depression. Lack of motivation is knowing your why. And when we had our little gathering back in October, you and me and a few other people, and we spoke with Hazel Rees, and she was like, she has her whys. Why do I do this? And so that's what motivates you, is just remembering that, why do you do it?
Yep. I love that. It's tough in this business. You said reaching out to other people. Like, there's a question on here about how to compensate for working on an island, because there's a lot of people that go to the office and feed off the energy in the office, right? And the people and the conversation and just kind of, I don't know, coffee chats or seeing people in the bathroom and stuff. And you can't get the same unless you proactively reach out to other franchisees. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why after sales conference and after convention, the energy is so high and the results are so high, the morale is so high. and it slowly just kind of declines until we do that again. And being around each other, it just, I don't know, like even during the hardest times, it's so nice just to talk to other people and pick up on little small things that they're doing. You can go back with energy and fuel on things that you're going to change, and just hopefully it's not knowing people are struggling like you, but it's just, I don't know, it's just it's so different when you're around people. It's a lot of fun being on those conventions and
yeah, and it's give and take. Like I have people that call me and say, hey, how are you doing? Well, like what are you doing? And then I have people that I call and say, hey, how are you doing so well? What are you doing that I can be doing? Like I go up the chain as well. Like I've had conversations with several people over the year. Most recently, Ralph Macchio, like he's just killing it, and so I've talked to him once or twice over the last couple of months about, hey, congrats on doing so well. What are you doing that I could be implementing as well? So
yep. Yeah, we're trying to get him on the podcast. He's almost as difficult as you are to book on your schedule, man. I got to give you a compliment on how much you protect your time. You were like, nope, not doing it. Nope, not doing it. And finally, I had to call you to say, hey, you don't have a choice. Here's the time and date.
I'm like, you got to clear this with Kelly. I'm giving you all the objections, Blake.
That's right. I'm just a weaker salesperson.
Well, you got me, so.
That's right. Okay, so you talked a little bit about your day structure. Do you still have the Tuesday, Thursdays where you go out and drop in on people?
No, well, actually, thanks to your round table back in, what would that have been? 2018, I believe. February, convention 2018, which was also in Orlando 2 years ago. That's where you talked about your success with Booth and Partners. And so I transitioned into a more telesales role at that point, and I think what turned out to be a good thing once March of 2020 rolled around with the coronavirus. And so I transitioned into a more telesales role. But like I said, I have not completely given up the face-to-face and my stop-by days, and I don't plan to. I mean, as long as I'm in the Phoenix area. There's so much local homegrown business right here that I know that you and Robin aren't tackling, and Rhonda's not tackling. So I'm not gonna just give that up. So
yep. The Phoenix Valley is so big and vast and just spread out, so you can more easily, in my opinion, find those warehouses or shippers, or even in the places like you say, get lost and find industrial parks that you didn't know existed that are doing shipments. I mean, if it's as simple as just following trucks like you said, right, and finding out, okay, there's LTL here, or we just saw a FedEx truck, or whatever the case. I mean, there's so much of that, so we need more people, or maybe we don't.
Yep. Maybe we don't.
Nice. So you're number one, man, highest in sales. Where is it tough? I know that you said you dropped back down. You might not be number one this year, but where do you go from here once you're at the top? Do you have new goals? Do you have to create goals for yourself and not put a target on somebody's back? Like what's your mindset now that you've accomplished the number one sales rep?
Yeah, so my mindset at this moment is how to grow that margin. Like, I don't really care so much about activations. It's how can you get the right customers, the customers that are going to give you great margin and hopefully aren't going to be too much of a hassle, and just not focus, like I said, trying not to care so much about activation numbers, but just getting the right customers, and then once you've got a right customer, trying to squeeze as much out of that customer as possible, like as far as cross-selling, like if you sold them on small package, then finding out, hey, do you do freight, or vice versa, and then selling them insurance, and then hey, did you know we do expedited? So it's just constantly going, revisiting the well, and just and you'll be surprised because you might have 9 or 10 signups and activations in 2 months, and before you know it, you haven't really gone back to any of them yet, and they're happy with whatever you started with them with, whether it's UPS or DHL or whatever, and you forget to go back to them and say, hey, by the way, you love this service. How are you doing freight?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just going back to those wells and seeing, hey, just wanted to make sure you hadn't forgot that we do these things too. Or somebody new takes over and they keep doing, DHL or UPS, but the previous person had been resistant to moving freight with you. Now you got a new person, so go and talk to them about freight, and they might be wide open to it.
Yeah. I love that. That's something that we struggle with because we're so sales, new business, new conversations, close, move on, rinse and repeat, right? And I don't do a good enough job of circling back and squeezing, like you said. So I've thought about doing like your customer service, training them a little bit to start asking those questions, because we're, not to say removed, but the customer kind of goes down the assembly line and is not handed off, because we still talk to them, but we don't always ask about the other services once we have the business. Is there a routine or a time of the month that you go back and circle back on those, or do you train Wendy to ask those questions and shoot those back to you when you get those opportunities?
Oh yeah, so Wendy is our client support specialist, for those who don't know that, and so she's been with us for over 3 years and is top shelf at her job. So Wendy doesn't really do anything that's salesy, no. And if somebody asks her a question about, hey, do you guys do expedite or whatever, she can give them a quote for that. But if it's more complicated, then she'll say, oh, let me get you back over to Shane, and he'll talk to you about that.
But that's all you need.
So,
that's exactly
right.
what you need, right? You just need to find those opportunities.
Well, that's the customer coming to you, though.
Right. Right.
You're saying. So my process is we have what we call it a 1 month check-in. But it's actually 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what their estimated volume is. So, in other words, after their first activation, their first shipment, it's gotten delivered, and you've given them their POD, proof of delivery. You've said, hey, your first shipment with us got delivered. Let me know if there's any issues or whatever. Then, if they haven't, whether they reach out in the meantime or not, basically at 4 to 6 weeks, I will call them up and say, hey, it's been 6 weeks since your first activation. I noticed you've done another 2 or 3 shipments since then. Just wanted to call and get your feedback, see if you had any questions or concerns. And about 80% of the time, they're going to say, oh, everything's handy-dandy. About 20% of the time, they might bring something up and say, oh, I was just wondering, can you guys do this? Does your web ship do that? Or I had a question about pickup. They will always seem to, about 20% of the time, they will always have a question. And so that's when I usually bring up, okay, and by the way, I don't think I talked about this before, but InXpress, in addition to being, DHL exclusive worldwide partner, we also are partnered with several of the most reliable and reputable freight carriers in the country. Do you ever have to do any LTL shipments or any flatbeds or full truckloads? That's when I transitioned into those things.
That's good. That's pretty formal. That works saying it like that?
The what?
It just feels pretty structured, I guess. I like how you worded that.
Yeah. Well, that was just kind of off the cuff, but yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. So you do a follow-up. If there's opportunities that come to them, they kick that back to you as a sales rep to price it or whatever, of course. And then you do a 1 month circle back. I like that. What about for customers that are declining? Do you have a process for measuring those or reaching out to those?
Yes, we do. So Sherry Miller, she's kind of does a lot of back end things for Kelly. So we have a team of 4. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 there. For those of you counting. So Sherry actually does retention checks. And so every Tuesday, she has a revolving amount of customers, I guess, pop up in the CRM that she goes in and she sees when their last invoice was. So when I set up a customer, I put them, okay, we estimate that these folks are going to ship every week, every month, every quarter, or basically annually, meaning they might do 2 or 3 shipments a year. It might have just been like a thing where, hey, we need to bring something in from China 2 or 3 times a year on our account, and we happen to need to do it right now. So I just kind of called them at the right time, like, okay, well, what the heck? I'll get an activation here, right? And hopefully it's a big import. So based on that, Sherry checks all those, and then anything that they're outside their parameters, it's been more than 4 weeks with no invoice, and they're listed as a month. Actually, I think we double it. So if it's been more than 8 weeks with no invoice, and I had put them down as a monthly shipper, then 1 month might be an anomaly, but 2 months now, something's wrong. Same with weekly, and so forth. And so she marks that as a code red, and so then it pops up. She puts that on a certain day of the month in my schedule. It's the same day. It's the second Thursday of every month. And so on the second Thursday, I might come in, there's 10 code reds in my CRM. And these are all the customers that haven't had an invoice in their allotted time frame. And so
I like that.
Get on the phone, or I'll shoot them an email and be like, hey, noticed you haven't shipped anything with us in the last 2 or 3 months. Just want to check in and see how everything's going. If you have any questions or concern, please let me know. I welcome any feedback. I'd like to regain all your shipments.
Okay. So you have someone, so Sherry looks at those and actually does tasks for you to reach out to those people.
Yep, and she'll put a note in there like last invoice was 9/23 of this year. She'll even put little notes like these guys were spot on every month until June, and stuff like that. So I know exactly what's going on when I make that phone call.
Those kind of little things, they sound so boring, monotonous, obvious process, but they're so crucial, man. Like knowing and finding out those people are being notified by Sherry in your example at the right time or early enough is so crucial in keeping those, right?
Yeah, and it's at first when we first implemented this program a couple years ago, we were checking them way too often. And that's why, like I said, now if they're like a daily shipper or a daily and a weekly shipper, we kind of count the same. Then we don't check. We check that every 4 weeks. And again, like I said earlier, if they're a monthly shipper, they ship 2 or 3 a month, then we don't check it every 4 weeks. We check that every 8 weeks. We want to give enough time and space so that if there's an anomaly, then we're not all over it. Because I would come in, there'd be 30 code reds. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, this is too much. And these people, half of them I would look at, and they had shipped 3 days ago. And it's like they just shipped, they just missed the cutoff barely. So we basically doubled it, and now it works really good. Like, I'm really truly finding the people that have stopped shipping for whatever reason. And
you said that time frame is 8 weeks?
Say that again?
What's the time frame that you use for Code Red now?
It just depends on what their shipping frequency was estimated at, which I will adjust. Like once they're a regular shipper, I'll even adjust that up or down, because they might have told me, we might do 2 or 3 a month international, and then once they start shipping, they're doing 8 or 9 a month international. Right? I see. So then I'll say, okay, these guys are more like weekly than monthly, so I'll adjust it down to weekly. Wow. And have her check it every 4 weeks, which is what she would do if it was a weekly shipper. They should check every 4 weeks. So okay, yeah, you get the picture, right?
Makes sense. So. All right, so I got one more question, and then I want to open it up to you for any closing comments or anything. This has been awesome for me. This is my favorite one. I guess you're going to hate it because it's talking about instant gratification, and you're all about process. But if you had to double the amount of revenue or clients that you have in 6 months, and your health or your family's health or lives dependent on it, what would that look like?
Yeah, that is my least favorite of the day. And this is one that they've asked at swap meetings before, and it's a tough one. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to it. The easy answer is if you've been selling is small package services like UPS or DHL, then the easiest way to double that revenue or even gross margin is to start selling freight. Because one $300 LTL shipment equals 21 pound DHL e-commerce type shipments, if you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. So I've had clients that ship 1 pounders every day going to Australia, France, whatever, And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we need to move an LTL shipment. And I'll do that. And when I'm done, I'm like, okay, we had them like at, 30% margin for that LTL. I made more money on that one shipment than I'm going to make on all their other shipments this month.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Going for freight, that's where the bigger margin dollars are. And so that's one way. I mean, another way is to, hire booth and partners or a lead generator in-house. I guess it depends on how much money you want to invest in order to try and double that. So doing that cost benefit analysis, for us, when we did booth and partners, I think we got our money's worth. I mean, it takes several months to a year or more to regain what you put into it, but you got some of those customers will stay with you for the next 5 to 10 years, right?
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yep. I love that. There's a couple business mentors that I've had that we walk through, or I just kind of show them the data on the monthly bundles, the data that we get. And they look at some of these customers and they're like, well, why wouldn't you go after more customers like this? Or why wouldn't you go after more customers like this? Like, what do they do? And you look at it and it's so obvious from their seat, but you're like, yeah, why don't I do that? Like I know that I have this perfect client that sends 3 ocean shipments a month and all they do is email me and we set it up and that's it. And we track it, right? Like that's all. It's great revenue. It's great. It's easy, customer service. They like us because we handle it and we track it. Like, why wouldn't I get more of those? Like, it's those profitability levers that you can pull on rather than just staying in the comfort level of what conversation am I the most comfortable having, right? And instead,
if they only knew, it's not that easy,
right?
I mean, since day one I remember the first convention I went to was actually here in Scottsdale, and one of the breakout sessions, we were all talking about sell import. I remember Mark Lang was like, lead with import. Do you ask them first question? Do you want to import? And it's like, yeah, I would love to get 100 other importers, but those are few and far between.
Right. Yep. You get in with one service, whatever you get, you roll with and keep going. I agree. It's just a matter of who they've been approached with previously, right? Like maybe, because usually the most profitable services are the most competitive. Like there's the most of them out there. So you're lucky to have the business. Not lucky, but you've earned that business, right? You've somehow shown that you're different from a service standpoint or an ease standpoint. You have a personal connection. You've built that rapport, whatever the case is. So, two ways to look at it. You can look at it of course, you want to pull on those profitability levers. Why don't we look for those customers that make us the most money and cost us the most or the least overhead or variable cost? And the other way is like, well, it's probably what everyone else is thinking too. It's very competitive to do that. Am I going to get less clients and less revenue if that's all I focused on?
Yeah. No, that's true too. And yeah, because if you are only focused on that, then it's more competitive. You're not going to find as much opportunity as far as customers that you can provide the pricing they're looking for and whatnot.
Right. Just curious, why? I think I know, but why do you hate that question?
I guess just because you have that assumption in your mind that you're already doing that. And so it's a question that gets under your skin because it's kind of, it's pinpointing something that you maybe need to look at.
Because you know what the next question is going to be, right?
It's basically one of those things that you don't like that you think, well, I'm doing everything I can do now to double my revenue, right?
Right.
And so it makes you sit back and take a hard look at it. So I guess that's probably the main reason you don't like that, or I don't like that question. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, listen, man, you're successful. You've climbed to number one. It's because, in my opinion, you've really watched, right? You've been inquisitive about other people's success. To your example, you watch Kelly. You want to listen to Kelly. You've been a mentee to her in learning how she sells and how she was successful. And you're always wanting to become better, right? Like you arranged the sales convention or conference that we had here a couple weeks ago, and you wanted to learn from people. You Skyped people in, and InXpress is lucky to have you, man. So thanks for being on the show. I want to open this up here at the end for any closing comments or any messages that you might have to the network.
I mean, I guess I'll just comment on what you already brought up and have already commented on before, and that's just like the process, like doing the same thing day in and day out and making it a habit. And if you're not having success doing the same thing day in and day out, then find somebody that is successful, like Blake Waller, and give him a call and just say, hey, Blake, what are you doing that I could be doing, or implementing? Because I remember a long time ago, like this guy in my church, he came up to me and he always had some little bit of wisdom that he was offering. And he said, practice doesn't make perfect. And I was like, that's what that's what I've always heard, is that practice makes perfect, right? Because I was taking piano lessons at the time, and he was asking about that. And he said, no, perfect practice makes perfect. And so if you're doing it the wrong way, if maybe you're not good at telesales, or maybe you're not good at face-to-face, and you need to transition into one or the other, or you don't know DHL well enough to sell international, or you don't know freight well enough to sell freight, or whatever, then talk to somebody. Because if you're doing everything you should be doing and it's not working, then it's because you're not practicing the right way.
Love it. There you have it. The Shane Hubbard. Thanks so much for being on the show, man. Look forward to seeing and talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, it's Blake. Just one more thing here. If you have any interest in InXpress or learning about what we do, head over to InXpress.com. There's a boatload of knowledge on shipping, B2B services, e-commerce growth, growing sales online. If you need a shipping quote, or you want to be a sales rep and crush it with us, or the website just sounds cool, InXpress.com. That's INXpress.com. Take care.